Hello everybody, and welcome to my attempt to recreate the Who Won't Get Fooled Again backing synthesizer track using all free software. Prior to this, I did a video on Bubba O'Reilly, again recreating the backing synthesizer track using all free software. And this one's going to kind of pick up where that one left off, so if you haven't seen that one yet, you might want to watch that one first, because I'm going to try not to rehash anything that was already covered in that video. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is bring up our software, same software we used for Bubba O'Reilly, and we're going to try to recreate that organ sound. We're going to do it a little differently than what we did in Bubba O'Reilly, but we're still going for a synthesized organ basically as the root of our sound here. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and do the 4 oscillators. I'm going to go ahead and use 2 dual oscillators so that I can get 2 oscillators on one module. That makes us, we only use 2 modules then for 4. In this case, we are going to go ahead with the sine wave, which is probably a little closer to what an organ really is. We used the saw in Bubba O'Reilly because it sounded a little closer to that song, but the sine wave is what we're going to use in this one. And we're going to go ahead and use our blender because we got 4 and we need to cut that down. So we're going to go ahead and put the blender in so we can cut the 4 down to 2. And for the moment, we're going to go ahead and run that into the amplifier, but we'll change that later on. But just to hear the sound at first, we're going to run that into the amplifier. So we're going to take our dual oscillator A and run it into the first leg of our blender. And we're going to take dual oscillator 1B and run that into the other side of our blender. And then on our second blender, we're going to do the same thing with dual oscillator 2, A and B. And we're going to mix them evenly. We're going to run this up to 50 so we'll get the same amount of sound from each side of the blender. Same thing here. And now we're going to run the output of the blender into the amplifier temporarily. We are, like I said, going to change that here a little bit later. And then we'll run the output of the amplifier left and right into our line out. And our ADSR is going to be the same as it was in Bubba O'Reilly. Attack 0, decay 0, sustain all the way up, and release 0. We also want to go ahead and turn our number of voices up if it's not already. 16 should be enough, so we'll set that one there. Now we should get a sound coming out of our synthesizer, which we do. So now we're going to go ahead and make a few modifications to some of the other oscillators. We're going to detune this one down, again like we did before, down about -7 or so, just to kind of thicken that sound up a bit. Gives us a little bit more sound there. Now we're going to pitch up our second one up a 5th, which is 7 on the pitch knob. Try that. There we go. And our last one, we're going to go ahead and pitch it up 2 octaves. I only did 1 on the last one. We're going to pitch this one up 2 octaves. Give us a higher sound there. There we go. Playing our whole first chord, it should sound like this. Okay, and it has a lot of highs in that, but we're going to filter some of that out here in a little bit, so it should get sound about right. So now we got our basic organ set up. Now we need to go ahead and add our filter. So we'll go ahead and add the filter here. I used the K35 in low pass. So now what we need to do, like I said before, is we need to run actually the output of the blender into the filter on both sides, or both inputs. And then we'll run the output of the filter into the amplifier. And we can just shut that input off for now. Now we should have the sound going through the low pass filter. which we do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn this filter cutoff way down. We're going to turn it down all the way to around 420. Okay. And that should give us see, it cuts off a lot of our highs there. It actually cuts off more than we want, but we're going to adjust that in a little bit. And for our resonance, we want to turn that up quite a bit, about 76 or so. That helps give it that kind of sweeping sound as it changes the cutoff, which we're going to do here a couple steps later. So that's going to give us basically the sound that we're looking for. Off the start, that's our basic sound. So now we got to do the modulation. So our first modulator is going to be an LFO. Actually, we're going to do two different modulators. They're both going to be LFOs. In this case, though, we're going to use the regular LFO for the first one and one side of the dual LFO for the second one, because the waveform selection is different. So, and the ones we need are not in both. The pulse wave is only in the single one. So we're going to use the pulse wave here, and we're going to sync that to eighth notes. This particular song uses eighth notes, but it does it at 132 beats a minute. That's where the song basically runs. So we're going to change our beats per minute in our host software to 132. And that should give us about where we want to. So that would override this rate knob, so it won't do anything. It'll just sync to the eighth notes based on that, on the 132 beats per minute. So now we're going to take that pulse wave and we're going to modulate the amplifier with that. So, and again, the same thing as in Baba O'Reilly, we only want the positive side. We don't want it to go clear below zero. So we're going to go there, and then we want to modify it completely. So we're going to turn the modulator knob all the way up. And now that should give us our pulsating sound. There we go. Getting closer to what we're looking for there. Now the only other piece of this is there is a sweeping change that goes across this song as it's being played. And I didn't cover that earlier, but this song is actually played, unlike Bubba O'Reilly, where it had a loop and then had the 30-second note part played in over top of the loop. This one is actually played all the way through. The entire thing is played. So it's not a loop. So we have to actually play chords to make this work. So now to get that sweep in, we're going to use, again, the dual LFO, because we need a triangle wave and it's not available in the single LFO. So we're going to add that and change this to the triangle wave. And we need it to go really slow. It needs to go, we're going to go with once every 4 measures. We're going to make this change. So it's going to go really slow. But that's how it is in the original song, where it sweeps really slow. And we're going to run the depth down on this a little bit to about 66. So what that should do is give us this as the brightest part of the sound, and then it will cut it off down to that on the bottom of the change. And that's basically how the original song went. So now we have to add this to the filter so that it makes that change with the filter. Again, LFO 2A positive. We only want the positive side. And we want the modulator knob all the way up. So now if we hold our chord, that should allow us to hear that sweeping change. Okay, we see how it goes down and comes brighter again. And that's basically it to recreate that "Won't Get Fooled Again" sound. It is a little too staccato in the pulse wave as it is by default, so I went ahead and shaped it up around 51 or so to smooth it off a little bit, and that gave it a sound that was pretty close to the original. There, see, it's a lot smoother now. Okay, so now all we have to do is actually play the part with this as our synthesizer. One piece of software that I did use for this that is different from Bubba O'Reilly is that with Bubba O'Reilly we just used this VST and the host playing it live. But in this one, I went ahead and used a digital audio workstation, which is normally where you put a VST, and you can have multiple tracks. And again, keeping in the theme, we're using all free software to do this. I used one called Cakewalk by BandLab, which is free. It actually used to be paid software, and now it doesn't cost anything except you do have to sign up for their service. You have to have their application for it to renew every once in a while, but that's also free, so there's no cost to it. So I already have Cakewalk loaded, and I have the chords played into the track already. So, but I just have a basic setup here in the VST, so it just sounds like almost like a basic piano. If I were to play it, you just hear the chords. So that's basically the right notes, but now if we change it to the bank that we just built, which is that one, it should sound pretty close to the real song. So that's it. That's as close as I was able to get to recreating the Won't Get Fooled Again background synth using all free software. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.